Hi everyone, I'm Nick Ainsworth, and I'm excited to be partnering with Pro Sound Effects to share some tips and techniques that can help level up your sound effects editorial workflows. So whether you're flying solo or you're part of a larger crew, these techniques can help streamline your organization, save you time, and improve communication across the board. So let's dive in with backgrounds and we can go from there. I'd like to begin the way that I would begin any new project, which is by importing the latest video render and guide track. And I've already done this here, so you can see that the video render is on a new picture track, indicating that it's the latest version of the cut. And the guide track is on a new guide track, also indicating that's the latest version of the guide track. This film that we're checking out today is by two good friends of mine, Lin Wang and Ed Scudder, and it's called Solstice. And it's a really great short film that's just about 1 minute and 45 seconds long. And I recommend you check that out online. And you can see that they've created this render at a true 24 frames per second, which is something you might see in animation more often than live action, where we're probably used to working at 23:9/8. So the first thing I want to do is just make sure that my Pro Tools session is set up to edit at 24 frames per second. And by hitting Command numeric keypad 2, I'll bring up the session setup, and we can see that this is reporting 24 frames per second time base. So our frame boundaries in grid mode in Pro Tools will correspond to that true 24 frames per second, and we'll be working at the correct speed. So the first thing I want to do is create a scene track. And the scene track is going to be a collection of region groups that kind of outlines the duration of each scene. And I'm using the word scene here to more indicate the length of backgrounds, not necessarily the length of the actual scene in terms of story. This is Matchbox from Cargo Cult. And typically in post-production sound, Matchbox is used when you've begun your sound effects edit and the picture department has turned over a new version of the cut. So then we can feed Matchbox either EDLs, AAFs, video or audio guide tracks of the new cut and the old cut, and it will create a change list, which is a list of the similarities and differences between those. And it will actually take control of Pro Tools and run the conform and do most of the work for us. But today we're going to use it to create a shot track. So the first thing I want to do is quickly jump back to Pro Tools, and I'm going to create a region group, which is the length of the whole render. Hitting Command Option G. And now I'm going to jump back into Matchbox. So now I'm going to feed it the video file. And I'm going to drop the video file into the new sequence zone. And I'm going to select it and come up to Reconform and select Create Shot Track in DAW using selected video files. Now Matchbox will need to analyze the video file and determine where the edit points are. Okay, so Matchbox has switched us over back to Pro Tools, and it's automatically opened the Matchbox Helper audio suite, which will allow Matchbox to communicate with Pro Tools and move through the show, making these edit points wherever there is a new shot. And you can see it's moving pretty quickly. And this is, of course, a short film, and we're already done. So I'll close the audio suite. And now the next thing I want to do is consolidate some of these regions into the length of background that I want to create. So I'm just going to hold Shift and drag through and make selections. So this first shot is an exterior. Now we're in the interior of the train. Up to this point, we go to the exterior shot. So hitting Command Option G, I'll consolidate those clips into one. Now we're in an exterior shot on top of the train. Consolidate those. and I'll just quickly move through the whole show. Okay, so now I've created the length of region that I want. I just want to drop some markers in so I get a vertical guide of where these scenes are happening. So I'm going to hit Tab to go to each edit point, hit Enter twice, and drop the marker, and I'm just going to move through really quickly and get all of them. Cool. And the last thing I want to do is just name these scenes so I get a quick visual reference of where we are in the film. And also this gives me an idea of what kind of sounds that I might want to spot in. And I'll just quickly move through this as well. Okay, so now I've named all of the scenes, and now I have this great visual reference for what's happening. So now I'm ready to begin spotting some sounds into the session, and I'm going to use the scene track that we created to create a placeholder for those sounds. And you can see that I've organized the session into several predubs, and we have a BGA predub and a BGB and a BGC and so on. And I have 8 mono tracks and 8 stereo tracks on each of those. So now I can just come in, make a selection for the first shot, and using colon come down, and I'll select one of the first stereo tracks, create a region group there, come down one more, make another region group, and now we have a couple placeholders that are exactly the length that we want for that shot. So we're here in SoundQ from Pro Sound Effects, and you can see that we're pointed at the Odyssey Collection Ambiences library. And you also can see the cloud icons going down the left-hand side, which is indicating that we're streaming these libraries right now. So I want to look for like a desert wind kind of sound to start off with. So let's listen to this one. Cool, so I like this wind, but it has a fly that's kind of buzzing around. And I don't think that's really appropriate for this, but I'm gonna just cut around the fly and get a section that works for me. So this looks like a pretty good section, and I'm gonna hit S and spot this into Pro Tools. So from here, I'm gonna continue cutting in some sounds into the film. And once I finish with the first scene, I'll move into the second scene. And this time I'll come down to the second predub in order to kind of checkerboard our backgrounds. And this way the re-recording mixer can come in, make a selection, and stripe these regions with automation without affecting the previous or following shot. So I'll just quickly go through the rest of the film here, spotting in backgrounds and spotted effects. And we'll meet back here and look at the next step, which will be crossfading these. So as you can see here, I've done a complete pass through the film and maintaining that checkerboard pattern throughout and leaving space on either side of each shot. You can see I also color-coded 3 of the background beds in purple, and that's just indicating that we have a recurring shot. And hopefully this communicates to the re-recording mixer that they can reuse the automation for those shots and hopefully save some time on their end. So now it's time to crossfade between these backgrounds so that we don't notice the cuts and they have a nice smooth transition. You can see that I have some background groups that are selected, but they're disabled currently. So I'm going to enable those groups. And now when I click in each predub, you can see that every track is now able to be edited at the same time. So I'll come into this transition and zoom in And you can see that the marker is giving us a nice indication of where the cut is. Now I can crossfade all the tracks at once. And I like to do a 1-frame crossfade. So if I come in here, select 1 frame before the cut and hit G, I'll get equal power, which works nicely on backgrounds. Equal gain fades are more appropriate for material when you're crossfading 2 clips that have some kind of phase coherence. So this should play really nicely. I like a single frame. I'll come in now and I'll draw back these regions. And if I come in, you can see now we get a single frame crossfade, and it pushes us right into this next scene. So now I'll just preview that transition. Cool, so that's a nice smooth transition. Sometimes you might hear a bump on the cut, which you don't want, so I'll make the waveforms a little larger. Let's say I'm hearing a bump on this track. Then I can come in, highlight it, select Control and the plus or minus keys on the numeric keypad, and I can slide the audio within the region and just slide it to a place where I don't hear the bump. So now I'll just continue through the rest of the film and create these crossfades on each scene. And if I hit Tab, you can see I just snap over to the next cut. And I'll enable groups again and just move through these. Okay, so now that we're done with that process, now I will continue going through the film and editing some hard effects, some Foley and some sound design. Then we can circle back and check out the organization and session layout for those elements. Okay, so now I've gone through and cut in some hard effects, Foley, and sound design for the first part of the film. So let's play this back and see what we have so far. Okay, so now you've heard all the tracks play together, so now we can dive into some of the details and see how the session is set up. So you can see that I've used clip gain here, and all these regions have clip gain so that we can keep the faders at 0, so you don't see any volume automation here. And we also have all of the pan automation set to the default settings. So for the mono tracks, that's right up the center. And for stereos, that's full wide left and right. Handing this off to a re-recording mixer, one of their first steps might be to clear all of the volume and pan automation and just start from the default setting. So you kind of just want to make these tracks play as best you can within these boundaries. So we have these background beds all organized here with mostly air and wind and the general sound of the atmosphere of these scenes without any specific sounds or any hard effect sounds in there. And that's to keep everything separate. When we come into the interior of the train here, you'll just hear some rattling sounds, nothing specific to the train engine or the steam kind of sounds of the train. So we'll check out the train predub in a bit, but this way everything's separated and you can easily find what you're looking for if you get a note or the mixer gets a note and they're like, hey, can we turn down all the trains? All the trains are in one spot with one VCA where they can easily be adjusted. So in this predub, I just have any specific sounds and you can see that they're color coded. And again, if we come into the interior of the train, you can see that there is some glass rattling happening here on 2 different tracks. And you can hear that that plays seamlessly. And what's happening here is I've done some perspective cutting, and when the camera angle shifts, and we come down to this next track, and I'm using equal gain here. And equal gain is essentially making this play seamlessly so we don't hear anything on the cut. So the re-recording mixer can come in here, make a selection, and give this camera angle a unique automation setting. And you see this yellow region group here says for open door. And I like to leave notes for the mixer or for the supervisor, and I have those here in yellow. And this is to indicate that this sound is released when the door is open. And so it has its own unique color as well. Now we can come into effects predub A. And if we check this out, you can see this is where I've put all the train sounds. Once again, doing some perspective cutting here. So if we play this back, you can hear that's the same continuous sound. It does get a little quieter on the next shot because it's happening a little bit more off screen, but that's just to give the re-recording mixer a little more flexibility. And I can come in here and you can hear that this is broken up into 2 parts. So that's kind of the classic steam chugging sound. And over here, that's more the classic click-clack kind of rattle of the train wheels. And then we get this steam sound for the interior shot. And once again, I dropped a note here for a couple more sounds that are released by the door opening. We have this classic San Francisco cable car sound. And we have the train whistle. This is a train whistle that I recorded up in Santa Cruz. And you can see that these are all the train sounds for the show are all here in one spot. And so we have 3 up here in blue, so let's check these out. So clearly that's for that train passing by on the left, and I did set up some temporary automation here to have that panning to the left just for reference for myself and to make it play a little clearer here in the video. You can check out some of these sounds. So that's a steam whistle sound that I brought into sound particles to put a little Doppler on it, and it has a little reverb tail at the end. So that's more of the steam kind of sound whooshing by. And again, that's the classic kind of click-clack rattle sound. And I've left another note here for this perspective shift. We come down to this low camera angle and you get a deeper metal ronk sound for that shot. So coming into effects predub B, let's see what we have here. We have some wings. And importantly here, it's wings on water, so it gives that sense of texture, not just a dry wing flap, but the sense that they're taking off on water. And we have some doors. So there we have the latch sound that's color-coded in kind of a pink. We have the slide of the door, and we have the impacts here. And we have a deeper metal impact to give the final door open a little more dramatic impact and give the entrance of this character a little more personality. And if we carry on to the end of the scene here, using that color coding scheme, you can see that I'm using similar sounds for the door close at the end of the scene, and hopefully keeping that color coding consistent, the re-recording mixer will know what to do with those. And if we come down into Foley, you can see that we have props, footsteps, and cloth. So we have the woman's glass here. And I dropped another note here. And this note here is just to communicate that the spur is an optional element and it can be easily muted if it's not wanted. And if we come over here, we have the footsteps for the alligator. So that was more of a sub kind of element just to give the alligator some weight. And you can see that those play exclusively until the door is opened. Then this next layer comes in, and I'll play the next layer. And that's more the kind of mid-range element. I also added some metal ronks here to give the character more sense of weight. And if we play this with the glass rattles from earlier, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you got something out of this that you can apply in your own workflows. And don't forget to follow Pro Sound Effects for more videos like this. I'll see you next time.